It begins like most mornings do, with the quiet clink of a spoon in a ceramic bowl, the steam curling upward from the surface, and a gentle rhythm of routine that feels safe, familiar, almost sacred, especially after 60, when routines become anchors, when simplicity becomes security. And for millions of older adults across the world, that routine often includes a warm bowl of oatmeal, praised for decades as the heart-healthy breakfast choice, the blood sugar balancer, the cholesterol fighting champion that health experts and nutritionists alike recommend with enthusiasm, and for good reason. Oats in their pure form are loaded with soluble fiber, particularly beta-glucan, which helps reduce LDL cholesterol and keeps digestion moving smoothly. They're rich in minerals like magnesium and iron, and when eaten plain, they are slow digesting, low glycemic, and genuinely good for the aging body. But here's the problem. The version of oatmeal that most people, especially seniors, are eating every day is far from plain. And in fact, the small, seemingly harmless things added to that bowl, out of habit, out of comfort, or out of sweetness, are what silently transform that healthy breakfast into a blood sugar bomb, an inflammation trigger, or even a liver stressor. And the worst part is that no one talks about it because it doesn't look like junk food, it doesn't taste like a candy bar, and it isn't marketed like a health hazard. But inside the body, especially an older body, where metabolism slows, organs are more vulnerable, and recovery takes longer, the effect of these hidden additions can be far more damaging than most people suspect. And the result is a silent contradiction. Seniors who believe they're making the healthy choice by eating oatmeal are, in reality, setting off slow-moving health issues that show up weeks or months later as fatigue, weight gain, blood sugar spikes, digestive issues, or even changes in liver enzyme levels that seem unrelated at first, but can be traced back with surprising clarity to that bowl of oats that became too sweet, too artificial, or too processed to be the health food it once promised to be. Now, before we go any further, let's make something very clear. Oatmeal on its own isn't the problem. And if you're eating plain rolled oats or steel-cut oats cooked in water or milk with a little cinnamon or fruit, you're likely doing your body a favor, especially if you're watching cholesterol or trying to stay regular. But most people aren't doing that. They're adding sugar, syrups, flavored powders, dried fruits soaked in preservatives, creamers loaded with chemicals, or protein powders with sweeteners they can't pronounce. And that's where the real damage starts. Not in the oats themselves, but in the company they keep. And once you hit your 60s or 70s, those additions don't just taste good. They carry consequences because the aging body isn't as forgiving as it used to be. The liver doesn't detoxify as quickly. The pancreas doesn't regulate insulin with the same efficiency. And the cardiovascular system becomes more reactive to spikes in sugar, sodium, and chemicals disguised as flavor. We don't talk about this enough, about how health halos can become health hazards, about how better than a donut isn't the same as actually good for you, and about how common wisdom doesn't always age well, especially when it comes to nutrition. And the truth is, so many seniors today are fighting silent battles with fatigue, weight gain, prediabetes, or early-stage fatty liver, without realizing that some of those battles started in the kitchen, with a bowl they thought was healing them, not harming them. And if you've ever finished your oatmeal and still felt hungry an hour later, or noticed your energy dip mid-morning, or been confused by rising blood sugar despite doing everything right, then it's time to look again. Not at the oats, but at what else is hiding in the bowl, and more importantly, at the beliefs we've inherited about what healthy really means. Because you deserve better than blind trust in food labels and convenience foods that claim to be nourishing, but are really engineered for taste, shelf life, and market appeal. Not for longevity, vitality, or cognitive clarity. And this video is here to change that. Not with fear, but with facts. Not with shame, but with strategy. Because aging isn't about giving up joy or flavor or sweetness. It's about choosing the kind of joy that sustains you, the kind of flavor that supports your health, and the kind of sweetness that doesn't come with a price tag your body has to pay. So over the next parts, we'll walk you through the top 7 oatmeal additions that can turn a smart breakfast into a slow-moving health threat, We'll break down the hidden sugars, the artificial ingredients, the liver loaders and blood sugar bombs that often go unnoticed. And more importantly, we'll show you how to replace them with choices that truly support your body after 60. Because health is not just about what you eat. It's about what you absorb, what you metabolize, what you tolerate, and what you choose again and again when no one's watching, when the house is quiet, when the morning is yours alone, and when you decide that your best years don't have to be behind you. They can be built one mindful bowl at a time. 7 common additions that turn oatmeal. Harmful 1. Brown sugar triggers sharp insulin and blood sugar spikes, leads to fatigue, cravings, and potential type 2 diabetes. Alternative, cinnamon, banana, or vanilla. It seems innocent at first. A spoonful of brown sugar swirled into a bowl of warm oats, melting smoothly, giving that nostalgic taste of comfort, of childhood, of home, and maybe that spoon becomes 2, maybe 3, because the bowl feels bland without it, because you're used to sweetness in the morning, because sugar makes the oatmeal feel like a treat, like something to look forward to, and you tell yourself it's not that much. It's better than syrup, better than dessert, better than skipping breakfast altogether. But what feels harmless is actually the first step in a metabolic chain reaction that your aging body can no longer absorb without consequences. And that's the truth we need to face. Brown sugar is still sugar, and for older adults, that small daily addition isn't just a flavor enhancer. It's a slow erosion of energy, brain clarity, and long-term stability that often goes unnoticed until it shows up in lab results, mood changes, or a creeping sense of fatigue that no nap seems to fix. Here's the problem. Sugar in any form, white, brown, raw, or organic, spikes insulin, the hormone that pulls glucose into your cells, and over time, especially in adults over 60, repeated insulin spikes make your body more resistant to insulin's effects, meaning your blood sugar stays high longer, your pancreas works harder, and your cells stop responding efficiently, which is the textbook pathway toward prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndrome, all of which become more common and more dangerous the older you get. And brown sugar? It's almost entirely sucrose, a 50-50 mix of glucose and fructose, the latter of which puts direct stress on the liver. That's right, fructose doesn't get used by muscles or the brain. It heads straight to the liver for processing, and in excess, it contributes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is now being diagnosed in people over 60 at alarmingly high rates, even in those who don't drink a drop of alcohol. But let's zoom in even more closely. What does a sugar-spiked oatmeal breakfast actually feel like for a senior? It starts with a quick burst of energy. You feel alert, even happy for the first hour. But then comes the crash. Your body overshoots insulin, your blood sugar drops too low, and suddenly you're reaching for another snack, feeling foggy, tired, or irritable. And because the insulin roller coaster also stimulates ghrelin, your hunger hormone, you find yourself eating more throughout the day, often craving more carbs or sugar, creating a loop that leads not just to weight gain, but to inflammation, poor sleep, and even impaired memory. Helen, 67, experienced this firsthand. She'd always been healthy, mindful of her food, and loyal to her oatmeal breakfast. But she was adding 2 tablespoons of brown sugar to each bowl and sometimes drizzling honey on top. She believed she was doing everything right. But when her A1C began creeping up and her energy dipped in the afternoons, she consulted a nutritionist. The suggestion? Remove all added sugars from her breakfast. Within weeks, her energy stabilized, her glucose readings improved, and perhaps most surprisingly, her cravings for sugar diminished. She wasn't depriving herself. She was rebalancing her body. This isn't about demonizing sugar. It's about understanding that what your body could tolerate at 35, it cannot process the same way at 65 or 75. And sugar is metabolically expensive. It doesn't nourish, it doesn't strengthen, it doesn't support muscle, cognition, or immune function. It gives a fleeting reward and a lingering cost. And those costs add up, especially when they're repeated daily, silently, with every sweetened bite. So what's the solution? You don't have to eat bland oatmeal. You just need to retrain your taste buds, and that starts with smart substitutions. Instead of brown sugar, try cinnamon, which balances blood sugar and adds warmth. Add sliced banana, which brings natural sweetness and potassium. A sprinkle of nutmeg or clove adds depth. If you need more, try a teaspoon of unsweetened apple puree or a handful of fresh berries. These options come with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants, not just empty calories. And here's the key. Within 2 weeks, your tongue adjusts. What once tasted plain now feels clean. What once seemed essential becomes optional, and what once spiked your blood sugar becomes something your body actually welcomes. It's never too late to reset your habits. The change doesn't have to be drastic. It just has to be consistent. You can still enjoy your oatmeal. You can still start your day with warmth. You just need to make that warmth work for you, not against you. Because every spoonful is either a step forward or a setback. And you've earned the right to step forward toward clarity, energy, and health you can feel. 2. Artificial sweeteners, e.g. aspartame, sucralose, disrupt metabolism, confuse insulin response, stress liver and increase belly fat or cravings. Alternative, real fruit, spices like nutmeg or almond extract. You might think you've outsmarted sugar. You skip the brown crystals, avoid the honey, ditch the syrup, and instead reach for a little pink, blue, or yellow packet. Maybe it's aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, or something labeled simply as sugar substitute. And you feel good about that choice because the packaging says 0 calories. The taste is sweet without the spike, and it seems like the best of both worlds, especially for someone trying to manage weight, control blood sugar, or avoid diabetes. But what those tiny packets don't say is this: 0 calories doesn't mean zero impact, especially in the bodies of older adults where hormone sensitivity, gut health, and metabolic balance are far more fragile than they used to be. And the truth is that many artificial sweeteners, though marketed as harmless, can actually disrupt the very systems seniors are trying to protect, including insulin signaling, digestive health, and even cognitive clarity. Let's start with the science, because the illusion of safety around artificial sweeteners is often built on narrow definitions. Most of these sweeteners don't raise blood glucose directly, which sounds great at first glance, but here's the problem. They still trigger a response in the brain and pancreas because your tongue perceives sweetness, and your body doesn't know that sweetness came from something artificial. So it begins to prepare for sugar, releases insulin, and then becomes confused when there's no real glucose to manage. And over time, this repeated disconnect, sweet taste but no calories, can actually lead to insulin resistance, the very thing most seniors are trying to avoid. Even more concerning is the way artificial sweeteners affect the gut microbiome. Those trillions of bacteria in your intestines that regulate digestion, inflammation, mood, immunity, and even brain function. And studies have shown that compounds like sucralose and saccharin can alter the composition of gut bacteria in ways that lead to inflammation, glucose intolerance, and even fat gain. All while you're thinking you're doing the right thing by skipping sugar. And for older adults whose gut diversity is already lower due to age, medications, and dietary patterns, this disruption can have a ripple effect that shows up as bloating, brain fog, low energy, or even elevated blood sugar despite eating healthy. Margaret, 71, thought she had it figured out. She was diabetic, so she avoided sugar like the plague. And every morning she added a couple of sucralose packets to her oatmeal, along with some sugar-free chocolate chips, convinced she was staying on track. But her blood sugar remained unpredictable. Her digestion became sluggish, and her mood swings increased, so she went back to her dietitian, who challenged her to remove all artificial sweeteners for just 2 weeks, replacing them with fruit, cinnamon, and unsweetened nut butters. And the results were immediate: smoother digestion, better energy, steadier glucose, and a surprising sense of fullness she hadn't felt in months. Because here's the irony. Artificial sweeteners may help you avoid calories, but they often lead to increased cravings because they don't satisfy hunger. They stimulate it, confusing your appetite regulation system and often leading to overeating later in the day. And let's talk about taste. These sweeteners are hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, which over time dulls your natural perception of sweetness, meaning real food, like berries, apples, or even carrots, start to taste bland, and you begin to lose interest in foods that actually support your health, choosing instead more products with artificial sweetness just to feel satisfaction, which locks you in a loop where your brain becomes conditioned to expect extreme sweetness, but your body never gets true nourishment. And that's not just a flavor issue, it's a neural one. Because long-term consumption of artificial sweeteners has been linked in some studies to increased risk of dementia and stroke, especially when consumed daily in beverages or meals. And though more research is still emerging, the correlation is enough to raise concern, especially for those over 60 already dealing with cognitive decline or cardiovascular risks. And here's the final twist. Many of the sugar-free or keto oatmeal packets, bars, or mix-ins being marketed to seniors today are filled with sugar alcohols like erythritol or maltitol, which can cause gas, bloating, and diarrhea, especially in older adults with sensitive digestion. And while they technically don't count toward your sugar intake, they absolutely count toward how your body feels. And they may be sabotaging your gut health in the very moment you're trying to protect it. So what's the alternative? Go back to basics. Real food, real flavor, and mindful combinations. If you need your oatmeal to taste sweet, add cooked apples, mashed banana, or frozen blueberries, all of which bring not just flavor but fiber, antioxidants, and nutrients that support blood sugar and brain health. Add cinnamon, nutmeg, or even a few drops of vanilla extract to bring warmth without sugar. And if you need an extra touch of sweetness, consider a tiny amount of raw honey or date puree, used sparingly and balanced with fiber or fat to blunt any spike. The goal here isn't to make oatmeal boring, it's to make it honest. To let the ingredients in your bowl actually nourish you, not confuse your hormones or gut. To let your body trust what you feed it. Because at this stage of life, you're not just eating to survive, you're eating to stay sharp, steady, and strong, and you deserve to know that some of the very products labeled safe or healthy are quietly eroding that foundation, not because of your intentions, but because of an industry that values sweetness over truth. But now you know, and that knowledge gives you power. Power to choose differently. Power to reclaim your taste buds. Power to feed yourself with clarity, not confusion. So the next time you reach for that packet, pause. Ask, is this helping me heal or just helping me cope? Is this real nourishment or an illusion of it? Because when you're over 60, there's no room for illusions. There's only room for what works, and your body will thank you for finally giving it something it can trust. 3. Dried fruits, especially sweetened, high in concentrated sugar, especially fructose, burden the liver, can contribute to fatty liver disease. Alternative, fresh berries, apple slices, banana. At first glance, it seems like the healthiest possible choice. Raisins, cranberries, chopped dates, or banana chips sprinkled onto a warm bowl of oatmeal, their wrinkled skins shining slightly in the morning light, carrying with them the comforting promise of nature, of fiber, of fruit without fuss, no peeling, slicing, or spoiling. Just a handful of convenience that feels wholesome and good, especially for older adults who grew up believing that fruit, in any form, was a gift to the body, a shortcut to vitamins, and a bridge between health and taste. But the truth, and the growing nutritional data behind it, reveals something else entirely. That most dried fruits, especially those added to oatmeal, are no longer what they seem, and for seniors in particular, they can become one of the most deceptively harmful additions to breakfast. Not because fruit is bad, but because the form it takes and the concentration it holds have changed, often without your knowledge and without your consent. Let's begin with what happens when fruit is dried. The process removes all water, leaving behind concentrated sugar, often in the form of fructose, which doesn't behave like glucose in your body. Instead, fructose bypasses the usual insulin pathways and gets metabolized in the liver, where it gets converted into fat more readily than glucose. And when that happens repeatedly, especially in an aging body, it begins to build up as visceral fat or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is now common in older adults who never touch alcohol, but often consume sweetened dried fruits, thinking they're being healthy. especially when they're tossed into oatmeal that's already lightly sweetened with other ingredients. And it's not just the natural sugar you need to worry about, it's the added sugar too, because most commercially sold dried fruits, especially cranberries, pineapples, mangoes, and banana chips, are coated in cane sugar or syrup to enhance flavor, preserve color, and appeal to taste preferences dulled by decades of high-sugar diets. And those sugars are rarely disclosed clearly on the label, often hiding under names like evaporated cane juice, dextrose, or fruit concentrate, all of which spike blood sugar quickly, promote insulin resistance, and defeat the purpose of eating oatmeal in the first place. Take banana chips, for example, a common topping for oatmeal bowls. They're not just dried bananas, they're often fried in oil, coated in sugar, and contain more calories and saturated fat per ounce than most candies. And yet they're still labeled natural, fruit-based, or energizing, which makes them especially dangerous to seniors who are trying to eat clean but don't realize they're consuming hidden sugar bombs in a fruit disguise. James, 72, thought he was doing the right thing. He added a generous handful of dried cranberries to his oatmeal every morning, alongside a scoop of nuts and a splash of milk. And for years, he assumed this breakfast was clean, balanced, and beneficial. But his A1C crept up, his waistline thickened, and his doctor warned of pre-diabetes on the horizon. Confused and discouraged, James saw a registered dietitian who asked him to read the label on his dried cranberries. Each quarter cup contained over 26 grams of sugar, nearly the same as a full-size candy bar, and that didn't include the other sugars in his breakfast. By simply switching to fresh blueberries and unsweetened almond butter, James watched his numbers stabilize, his energy return, and his snacking habits fall away naturally, because real food, less processed, less sweet, more nourishing, finally began to satisfy what his body actually needed. And let's not forget digestion. Dried fruits are often coated with sulfur dioxide, a preservative used to extend shelf life and prevent browning. But in many people, especially older adults with sensitive guts or mild food intolerances, this chemical can trigger bloating, gas, headaches, and inflammation. And because those symptoms can be mild or delayed, most people never trace them back to their healthy breakfast, chalking it up to aging or stress, when in fact it's the processed food hiding behind a health halo. But we're not here to scare you. We're here to empower you with better choices. And the good news is that fresh or frozen fruit is still your best friend when it comes to oatmeal. It brings not only natural fiber that slows the absorption of sugar, but also vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants in their most bioavailable form, in options like blueberries, raspberries, sliced apples, or even grated pear. Offer sweetness without the spike, hydration without the burden, and flavor that evolves with the seasons so you don't get bored. And if convenience is your concern, consider keeping frozen berries on hand. They're picked at peak ripeness, flash frozen to preserve nutrients, and easy to stir into warm oatmeal, where they melt and infuse your bowl with both sweetness and color. And if you really miss that chewy texture of dried fruit, try chopping up a medjool date or two, or adding a few dried figs without added sugar. In small amounts, they can be part of a balanced bowl, but always remember, when it comes to sweetness, it's not just about how much. It's about what form it takes, what it's packaged with, and how it interacts with the rest of your body's systems. Because your body at this stage of life doesn't need tricks. It needs truth. And the truth is this: dried fruit can be helpful in moderation, but most versions sold today are closer to candy than to produce. And when you mix that into your morning thinking it's harmless, you're unknowingly feeding inflammation, insulin spikes, and long-term metabolic dysfunction that can slowly erode the quality of your days, your energy, your memory, and your strength. You deserve a better bowl, a clearer label, and a breakfast that actually loves you back. Let go of the old idea that dried fruit is always good for you. Embrace the new idea that fresh food, made with care and intention, is the most loving thing you can feed yourself. And your body, your skin, your brain, your heart will rise to meet that love, one clean bowl at a time. 4. Flavored oatmeal packets. High in sodium, artificial flavors, and preservatives, can increase blood pressure and inflammation. Alternative. Plain oats with real fruit or cinnamon. You open the pantry and there they are. Neatly lined boxes filled with brightly colored packets, each promising something warm, easy, and comforting. Maple brown sugar, apple cinnamon, raisin date and walnut, and a dozen other flavors that seem wholesome, delicious, and ideal for busy mornings or quiet routines, especially in retirement when cooking a full breakfast might feel overwhelming or unnecessary, and so it becomes a habit. Rip open a packet, add water, microwave for 1 minute, and breakfast is done, steaming and sweet and efficient, which feels perfect, especially for older adults who want something warm and fast. But here's the quiet truth hiding behind the convenience. Flavored oatmeal packets may be one of the most deceptive products in your kitchen, and for seniors, they carry a unique risk. Because what seems like a smart, heart-healthy choice is often just a sugar-laced, sodium-filled, artificially flavored trap that taxes your metabolism, elevates your blood pressure, and leaves you more fatigued, inflamed, and imbalanced than before you ever picked up that spoon. Let's look at the label. Really look, because the front of the box will say things like heart healthy, whole grain oats, or good source of fiber. But the back of the packet tells the truth. 12 to 16 grams of sugar per serving, sometimes more than a glazed donut, plus artificial flavorings, caramel coloring, hydrogenated oils, and chemical preservatives like BHT or TBHQ, which are added to extend shelf life but have been linked in studies to endocrine disruption and oxidative stress. And while these additives might be manageable in a younger body, for seniors who already face slower detoxification, weakened kidney and liver function, and more fragile hormonal balance, those tiny daily doses of artificial ingredients can have long-term cumulative effects that show up as fatigue, weight gain, poor sleep, or rising inflammation markers in blood work. Now consider the sodium. Most flavored oatmeal packets contain 200 to 300 milligrams of sodium per serving, which adds up fast, especially for those managing hypertension or heart disease. And while that may not seem like much, it often comes on top of other sodium sources throughout the day. And that additional salt, especially when hidden behind sweet flavors, contributes to water retention, swelling, and elevated blood pressure, all of which increase the risk of stroke, heart failure, or kidney damage, especially in the elderly. The irony? Many of these flavored packets are marketed directly to older adults, using buzzwords like fiber-rich, easy to digest, or doctor recommended. But the people creating these products aren't thinking about your aging digestion, your glucose sensitivity, or your immune resilience. They're thinking about shelf stability, taste addiction, and mass production. And the result is a product that delivers the illusion of health while slowly undermining it, one convenient morning at a time. Samantha, 69, was a retired nurse who thought she knew nutrition well. She ate oatmeal every morning, rotating between different flavors from a popular brand, and she believed she was making a smart choice, especially because she added nothing extra, just water and a spoon. But when she started noticing joint stiffness, brain fog, and spikes in blood pressure, she assumed it was just age catching up, until her granddaughter asked her one morning, "Grandma, why does your oatmeal smell like candy?" And that's when she started reading the labels, realizing that her breakfast, which felt gentle and simple, was full of sugar, synthetic flavors, and sodium. And over the next month, she made the switch to plain rolled oats, adding her own blueberries, cinnamon, and a dollop of yogurt. And within weeks, she felt sharper, lighter, and more satisfied. And she never went back. And that's the bigger issue here. Not just what's in those packets, but what's not in them. Real food, real fiber, real nutrition. Because these packets are often stripped of nutrients during processing, leaving only isolated fibers like maltodextrin or inulin added back in, which don't behave the same way in your body as natural fibers do. And while they might bulk up your oatmeal or make the nutrition label look impressive, they don't feed your gut bacteria, stabilize your energy, or contribute to long-term satiety in the same meaningful way. So what's the better choice? You don't have to spend hours cooking steel-cut oats on the stove. Plain rolled oats cook in less than 5 minutes, and you can batch cook them for the week, store them in the fridge, and reheat as needed with fresh additions. And here's the magic. When you take control of the base, you regain control over everything else. Sweetness, salt, texture, flavor, fiber, and your body, which has spent years compensating for processed foods, finally gets a chance to reset, to rebuild balance, and to experience what real nourishment actually feels like. Steady energy, fewer cravings, clearer thinking, and deeper rest. And if you really miss the flavor, try making your own packets at home. Combine oats with dried cinnamon, flaxseed, a pinch of salt, and keep them in jars or reusable bags. Then add fresh fruit or nut butter when serving, so you get the ease without the additives, the flavor without the fallout. Because convenience is not a substitute for care, and what your body needs now isn't fast, it's real. So next time you see those tidy little packets on the shelf, pause. Remember, a healthy habit built on unhealthy ingredients is still a risk, and you've come too far to let marketing win over metabolism. Choose the version of oatmeal that respects your body, your years, your wisdom, and your future. 5. Non-dairy creamers often contain trans fats, hydrogenated oils, and emulsifiers, linked to higher cholesterol, inflammation, and liver burden. Alternative, almond milk, oat milk, or plain yogurt. It starts with a simple desire for richness, warmth, and a creamy texture that makes your morning oatmeal feel more comforting, more satisfying, more like something indulgent than medicinal. And so you reach for something familiar, something you've used for years. Non-dairy creamer, that plastic bottle or powdered tin that promises creaminess without the calories of real cream. And you think, this must be a smart choice, especially now that I'm older, trying to manage cholesterol or avoid dairy sensitivities. And the label sounds reassuring too. Lactose-free, cholesterol-free, non-dairy, plant-based. But beneath those comforting words is a truth that almost no one talks about. Most non-dairy creamers are filled with chemicals, inflammatory oils, and additives that actively undermine your health. Especially as you age, the quiet of your kitchen, that one little splash could be turning your wholesome bowl into a toxic blend of ingredients your body can't properly digest, absorb, or process. Let's break it down. Non-dairy creamers are not just milk alternatives. They're usually made from hydrogenated vegetable oils like corn, soybean, or palm oil, blended with corn syrup solids, artificial flavors, chemical thickeners, and preservatives. And while that combination might taste smooth and creamy, what it does to your arteries, liver, and brain is far from gentle, particularly for older adults whose bodies no longer metabolize synthetic fats or emulsifiers efficiently. And that's the first issue. Hydrogenated oils contain trans fats, which are widely known to increase LDL, bad cholesterol, and lower HDL, good cholesterol, a dangerous combo for anyone, but especially seniors already managing heart disease, high blood pressure, or circulation problems. Even if your non-dairy creamer says 0 grams trans fat, don't be fooled. U.S. labeling laws allow up to 0.5 grams per serving to be listed as zero, which means if you're using a tablespoon or two daily, you could still be consuming enough trans fats to cause arterial plaque buildup, which over time increases your risk for stroke, heart attack, or vascular dementia. And the damage from these fats is not always felt immediately, but it accumulates silently, especially when it becomes part of your daily routine, quietly undermining the very health you're trying to protect. Now let's talk about corn syrup solids and artificial sweeteners, which are often added to non-dairy creamers to improve taste and mouthfeel. These ingredients spike blood sugar and trigger insulin release, even in sugar-free versions, and contribute to metabolic dysfunction and inflammation, especially in older adults whose insulin sensitivity has already declined. And when you're pairing this creamer with a flavored or sweetened oatmeal, the result is a metabolic double punch that can leave you feeling sluggish, foggy, or bloated before you've even finished your first cup of coffee. What's worse, non-dairy creamers often contain synthetic emulsifiers like mono and diglycerides, carrageenan, or polysorbates, which may seem harmless but have been linked in recent studies to gut lining disruption, microbiome imbalance, and even low-grade inflammation that contributes to joint pain, cognitive decline, or autoimmune flare-ups, conditions that are more common and more debilitating in aging populations. Janice is 66, started adding non-dairy vanilla creamer to her oatmeal a few years ago, thinking she was being careful by avoiding real cream, which upset her stomach, and she loved the sweet flavor and how it made her oats feel like dessert. But after months of unexplained bloating, mood swings, and an increase in LDL cholesterol, she began tracking her food more closely. And when her dietitian reviewed her morning habits, the culprit was clear. Her creamer was delivering more than calories. It was delivering metabolic confusion, and once she replaced it with unsweetened almond milk and a drizzle of real vanilla extract, her symptoms began to ease, her blood work improved, and most importantly, her trust in her body slowly returned. Because here's the truth that matters. Your body knows the difference between food and food-like substances, and while non-dairy creamers are technically edible, they are not nourishing. They are not metabolically neutral, and they are not designed with longevity in mind. They are products of convenience, cost-cutting, and flavor engineering. And they do not belong in the same bowl as oats, which are one of the most naturally healing grains available to you. So, what's the better alternative? If you need creaminess, try adding unsweetened almond milk, oat milk, or coconut milk, ideally ones with no added sugar or gums. Check for ingredients like just almonds and water or coconut and water, nothing else. You can also stir in a spoonful of chia seeds or ground flaxseed, which thicken your oats naturally while providing omega-3s, fiber, and gut healing benefits. A swirl of Greek yogurt or a splash of real milk, yes, even full fat if tolerated, can offer real nutrition without artificial nonsense. And best of all, these real foods satisfy more deeply, leaving you fuller, longer, and more metabolically balanced throughout your day. And remember, comfort doesn't have to come at the cost of clarity. Texture doesn't have to sacrifice truth. You can still have richness, you can still have warmth, but only when your choices support not just your taste buds, but your cells, your hormones, and your heart. Because the body you live in now, more than ever, deserves ingredients that honor its effort, not ingredients that make it work harder to stay well. So the next time you reach for that creamer, pause. Ask, does this comfort come with a cost? Because at this age, health is not just about what you avoid, it's about what you accept. And you never have to accept chemicals dressed as cream. Choose the nourishment that lifts you, not the one that lulls you with sweetness and leaves your body struggling to recover. 6. Protein powders may contain sweeteners and additives that stress liver, your kidneys. Excess protein isn't always well processed in older adults. Alternative, eggs, nuts, or Greek yogurt for natural protein. It sounds like a good idea, maybe even a great one. You hear it from doctors, nutritionists, fitness coaches. Add more protein. And so you do, especially as you get older, because you've read that muscle mass declines with age, that strength fades unless you fight for it, that protein helps keep bones strong and the immune system sharp. And so you buy a tub of protein powder, something vanilla or chocolate flavored, with promises of building strength, maintaining energy, and supporting recovery. And you scoop it into your oatmeal in the morning thinking you're doing something smart, something proactive, something that will help you stay youthful and vibrant. But here's what most seniors don't realize. Not all protein powders are created equal. And for older adults, especially those dealing with slower digestion, reduced kidney function, or underlying metabolic conditions, adding protein the wrong way can cause more harm than good. And the oatmeal bowl, once a symbol of balance, can quickly become a vessel for excess, confusion, and inflammation. Let's begin with the types of protein powders most commonly added to oatmeal. Whey casein, soy, pea, rice, and collagen blends, each one marketed as clean, powerful, or muscle-building. But many of these are highly processed, stripped of natural enzymes, and often contain artificial sweeteners, gums, emulsifiers, synthetic vitamins, and flavoring agents designed to mimic dessert while promising health. And when your body is over 60, those additions can disrupt digestion, inflame your gut, or overburden your kidneys, which may already be working harder due to age, blood pressure meds, or chronic conditions like diabetes or hypertension. The truth is, too much protein, especially in isolated, concentrated form, can put unnecessary strain on your renal system. And studies have shown that older adults with even mild kidney dysfunction may experience faster decline when consuming large doses of protein powders, particularly when those powders are paired with insufficient hydration, low fiber intake, or high sodium elsewhere in the diet. And while protein is essential, more is not always better, especially if it comes without whole food context, without the balance of vitamins, minerals, and natural cofactors that help your body absorb and utilize that protein properly. And then there's the issue of digestibility. Many seniors experience slower stomach emptying, reduced enzyme production, or subtle food intolerances they didn't have earlier in life. And for them, slamming a scoop of dense protein powder into oatmeal can lead to bloating, reflux, sluggishness, or even loose stools, which they often mistake as a random bad day, when in reality, it's the body saying, I can't process this the way you think I can. Jack, 75, was a former runner who prided himself on staying active. After reading that protein could help preserve muscle, he started adding a full scoop of whey isolate to his morning oats, hoping to boost his strength. But over time, he noticed more joint pain, an afternoon energy crash, and recurring constipation. His doctor said his kidney function was declining slightly, not dangerously, but steadily. And when Jack removed the powder and returned to whole protein sources like Greek yogurt, chopped walnuts, and soft-boiled eggs later in the day, his symptoms improved and his strength continued to rise. Not because he gave up on protein, but because he finally started listening to what kind of protein his body actually needed. So what's the alternative if you still want that boost? Focus on real food additions that your body can digest, recognize, and benefit from. Chopped almonds, sunflower seeds, chia or flax seeds, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, pumpkin seeds, or a small scoop of nut butter all add protein in a gentler, more nourishing form, often accompanied by healthy fats, minerals, and fiber that aid digestion and metabolism. And if you still want to use protein powder, look for ones that are minimalist, with only 1 or 2 ingredients, no sweeteners or gums, and made from something your body tolerates. Maybe plain unsweetened collagen or a rice pea blend with no additives. Start with half a scoop, not a full one, and always pair it with enough water and fiber to avoid overloading your system. Because here's the bottom line, your body's protein needs may go up as you age, but your ability to handle ultra-processed supplementation goes down, and trying to compensate for age with industrial powders misses the entire point of aging well, which isn't about more, faster, stronger. It's about intentional, efficient, intelligent nourishment, giving your body exactly what it needs, not just what's marketed as healthy. And oatmeal, simple, honest oatmeal, is already doing so much for you. Fiber, heart health, satiety, blood sugar regulation. Don't undo that good with a scoop of something your gut can't recognize, your kidneys can't process, and your brain doesn't need. Ask yourself, is this protein helping me feel energized, strong, and clear? Or is it leaving me heavier, slower, or confused? Because health isn't built on supplements. It's built on daily clarity, gentle progress, and deep listening. And your body at this stage deserves that kind of care. Let's strip it all away. The powders, the packets, the sugary fruit bits, the synthetic creamers, and come back to what oatmeal was always meant to be. A healing, grounding, slow-burning meal that warms the body and stabilizes the mind. Not just something to fill space in the stomach, but a choice that tells your cells, I still care about you. I still want you to thrive. Even after 60, even after the diagnoses, even after the routines have hardened and the body has slowed. Because this bowl is not just breakfast, it's a quiet revolution, and it begins with simplicity. Whole rolled oats, soaked or gently simmered, with water or milk or a blend of both, then built upon with layers of ingredients that work with your biology, not against it. It starts with fiber, real, unprocessed, soluble fiber that binds to cholesterol, slows digestion, feeds good bacteria in the gut, and keeps blood sugar curves soft and steady instead of spiking and crashing. And oats are rich in beta-glucan, a powerful fiber that doesn't just reduce LDL cholesterol, but also strengthens immunity, a crucial factor in aging where inflammation often quietly chips away at energy, mobility, and resilience. But fiber alone isn't enough, because the body over 60 also needs healthy fats, especially from sources that reduce joint stiffness, support brain function, and keep energy consistent. So the next layer of your better bowl might include chia seeds, ground flax, walnuts, or a spoonful of almond butter, all of which bring omega-3s, magnesium, and satiety that keeps you full longer and reduces afternoon cravings that lead to poor snacking. Then comes protein, not in the form of an artificial scoop, but from real food. Maybe a few spoonfuls of Greek yogurt stirred in after cooking, or a small handful of toasted pumpkin seeds, or even a side of boiled egg if that suits your taste and tolerance. The point is not to overload the body with isolated nutrients, but to build a bowl that speaks your language, that flows with the natural systems of digestion, insulin, hormone release, and neurotransmitter balance. For sweetness, go natural, go gentle, mashed banana, chopped apple, or a handful of frozen berries simmered directly into the oats will add not only flavor, but antioxidants, hydration, and color that speaks to your senses without confusing your pancreas. And if you want a touch more depth, use cinnamon, nutmeg, or even a pinch of sea salt, which enhances natural flavors and reminds your taste buds that real food doesn't need to shout to be satisfying. And here's what happens when you do this. When you craft this kind of bowl and give it to yourself consistently, digestion improves, blood sugar stabilizes, energy becomes more even, mood lifts subtly, and perhaps most importantly, your relationship with food heals because it's no longer about restriction or confusion, but about alignment. Your food choices start to reflect your values, your wisdom, your inner sense of what nourishment actually means. Anne, 73, had tried every variation, instant packets, protein mix-ins, dried fruit blends, but always felt tired, hungry soon after, or bloated, until one day she decided to go back to the basics. Plain oats, unsweetened almond milk, simmered with blueberries and cinnamon, topped with walnuts and a spoonful of plain yogurt. Nothing fancy, nothing extreme. And for the first time in months, she felt grounded, full without fog, calm without craving. And it wasn't just the ingredients, it was the intention behind them. She wasn't feeding herself like someone trying to fix a problem. She was feeding herself like someone worth feeding well. Because the truth is, you don't have to give up oatmeal. You just have to give up what's been done to it. Let go of the lies sold in flashy packaging. Let go of the shortcuts that cost your body too much. Let go of the idea that health after 60 must be complicated or expensive or impossible. And instead, make this quiet shift. From processed to whole, from artificial to real, from rush to intentional. Because that shift doesn't just change your breakfast. It changes your day, your rhythm, your cravings, and eventually your outcomes. Less pain, more clarity, better numbers, stronger digestion, deeper sleep, all because you built your morning not on convenience, but on care. So tomorrow morning, start here. Oats, water, time. Then add what supports you, what energizes you, what reflects what you now know. Because the body listens always. And when you begin to feed it with respect, it responds not with perfection, but with gratitude. And that, at any age, is the most healing thing of all.